yeah, it's that time once again. Time for our weekly look around the best division in football with our panel of experts from across the West Coast. That's right, it's time for the NFC West Huddle. I'm Ethan McReynolds in Seattle. I'm joined by Richard Sines in Phoenix, Bailey O'Carroll in San Francisco, and Ryan Dyrud of LAFB Network in Los Angeles. Guys, not a lot of smack talk that I can give out at the moment. Our division has by far the best record in football. It's 7-0. We all won our Week 2 matchup. You guys are all undefeated. I'm very jealous. So I'll start there with Week 2. What were your main takeaways from the week, and did your squad improve from last week? Richard, I know your Chimichangas are undefeated, but talk to me about your undefeated Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning the Chimichangas. Yeah, they're off to a great start. Thanks to Christian McCaffrey. Bailey, thank you very much on that. But yes, the Cardinals are 2-0, and boy, it sounds great, right? 2-0 is better than 0-2 like Bailey's fantasy football team and Ethan's fantasy football team. But anyway, yeah, Cardinals 2-0. They went on the road. Did they improve? I say yes and no, right? The defense, they got all over Bryce Young. The first two possessions, they forced turnovers, even scored a touchdown on the first possession. Sack, fumble, recovered in the end zone by Zayvon Collins for a touchdown. Then they hit Young as he's throwing the ball for an interception. And the cool thing was, the Cardinals went all in on defense, right, in the offseason. Every draft pick but one was on the defensive side of the football. They went and got some big-time free agents. Josh Sweat from the Philadelphia Eagles brought back Calais Campbell. Baron Browning was the guy they brought in the middle of last year. They kept him. And all of those guys came through in that game. So it was kind of neat to see, you know, the investment that Monty Ossenfort made already paying off. Josh Sweat forced the fumble that was recovered by Zayvon Collins. And then, you know, Baron Browning gets the interception. And then Calais Campbell, you know, old man winner, still comes through. Then this is a guy that brings back good memories. He was with the Cardinals back in 2008 when they went to the Super Bowl. He gets the sack on the last play of the game. So that was the improvement. But then they take a step back and they let Carolina in the game where Calais Campbell had to get the sack anyway. They were in complete control. They had some interesting mistakes down the stretch, turnovers. Kyler Murray threw a pass and you're like, what are you thinking after a great run? Then, you know, they don't convert the onside kick. Their hands team wasn't out there. The ball bounces off of, you know, Mac Wilson. Carolina converts it because they recover. You're like, oh boy, are they going to lose this game? They had to come back to the defense, bailing them out for a second week in a row. So yes and no. They improved, but they also took a step back.
Very interesting. Yeah, Bailey, let's go over to you with the Niners. No Brock Purdy. What was the Mac Jones experience like in Week 2?
I think the takeaway is Mac Jones is a baller. I mean, he threw 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 279 yards. I think it's so interesting. The Niners, and you know, you guys up in Seattle know this well, the Niners produce backup quarterbacks that go on to be starters. I think Mac Jones, it was just one game, but I mean, Mac Jones started 7 games last season. He's still a starter in this league, and he's a heck of a backup to have, especially if Brock Purdy, your starting quarterback, is going to go down with a turf toe injury in Week 2 of the season. He was questionable at this point, limited in practice this week, so we don't exactly know. The assumption is that Mac Jones will likely start this next game against the Cardinals, but and that they would use Brock Purdy as sort of an emergency backup, if you will, so the two kind of reversing roles. But what we took away from Week 2 is that Mac Jones is a phenomenal backup quarterback to have, and that this Niners defense, it's night and day from last season to this season. They're gelling is the word I'm looking for, very early on in the season. So the Robert Saleh effect is in full effect in Week 2. Niners fans like to hear that. And your backup quarterback is a reliable quarterback who can come in and win you games in a big way. So yeah, we learned this Niners team has depth. That was a big question mark coming into this year, and I think it is very early, so I hesitate to say this. It could be a completely different story come Week 8, but they have depth, and I think they showed that they have confidence in this squad, and they can do it behind Brock Purdy or Mac Jones.
Ryan, I'll go over to you next. Main takeaways from the Rams' big win over the Titans.
Yeah, great to see you all again. I love that there's already discourse now in San Francisco, like, did we overpay Purdy? Is this just a quarterback-friendly system? Can anyone take over? But that's a problem for a different day. Rams, moved to 2-0, 33-19 win over the Titans. Ugly first half, guys. Rams were down 13-10 in this game, and the offense looked extremely sluggish yet again. Couldn't really get much going. The defense obviously played well enough to keep them in the game, but then, as the great author once said, a tale of two halves, and the Rams came out and looked great in the second half, pulling away, and the offense finally got going. So, biggest takeaways, this defense is pretty legit. They haven't necessarily played, powerhouse offenses yet. The Titans, obviously, are with a rookie quarterback, and a lot of just question marks there on the offensive side of the football. So not the stiffest competition, but they're getting high production out of a lot of their players. Byron Young, 5 tackles, 2 sacks as he's going into a contract year next year. Jared Verse yet to get the sack column yet. It's coming. It should be coming, but plenty of pressures and wreaking havoc back there. In the front of the defensive line. And on the back end, just another great day from the defensive back room. Now, obviously, the one blemish, Ahkello Witherspoon, ends up breaking his clavicle, who's been their CB1, so he will be out. McVay said a maximum of 12 weeks, which I broke my clavicle in high school playing football, and I only missed 6 weeks, so that seems like a pretty massive break if it does keep him out that long. They go and sign Trey Brown, formerly the Seahawks. He was with the Niners this year in training camp, so he'll be kind of as a depth piece as they turn to Darius Williams and Kobe Durant back there. So a great, unit, or a great Sunday from that unit. We'll see how they can fare this week against a much better opponent, down one of their top players. And then offensively, I'll just say quickly, I think we finally saw some production from the running back room in terms of balance. Now, I know Richard won't like to hear this. He's got Kyren Williams on the chimichangas, as he said, but we're finally seeing Blake Corum get involved a little bit. We've been asking for it for a long time. They drafted him last year to be that kind of inclusive back with Kyren Williams, and he really has barely been used. Only 1 carry last week. This week, he still only gets 5 carries, but he turned that into a touchdown, into 40-plus yards, an 8.8 yard per carry average. You can see the explosiveness from Blake Corum, and that's great to see. So good stuff from the offense in the second half, and hopefully they can build on that as they go play the Super Bowl champion Eagles next week.
Yeah, Ryan, well, you mentioned a tale of two halves, and it's funny because it was the exact same for the Seattle Seahawks. I will start by saying it was a big improvement from week 1 to week 2, the loss to the Niners versus the win against the Steelers. Maybe it has something to do with them being on the road. For some reason, the Hawks have been much better away from Lumen Field under Mike McDonald. Sunday's win over the Steelers was their 8th straight road win that sets a franchise record, and it was a well-rounded, dominant win, in my opinion. The offense had some hiccups in the first half, a missed field goal by Jason Myers, 2 picks by Sam Darnold. But once the second half hit, the ground game was rolling, led by Ken Walker, who broke the century mark on just 13 carries. He looked like his old self. And Sam Darnold, he looked confident throwing the ball downfield and even used his legs to extend plays and convert some key third downs. I thought Clint Kubiak had a much better day as a play caller, mixing in more play action than in week 1. That was something that even Mike McDonald said they wanted to see more of, just 2 play action calls in week 1. It was a lot better in week 2. And the defense, they were just absolutely spectacular. While missing arguably their best player in cornerback Devin Witherspoon, I was very concerned coming into the game, seeing him with a doubtful designation and then him not playing. But 2024 first-round pick, Byron Murphy had himself a standout day to help replace Spoon's production. He had a sack and a half, 5 pressures. The defense forced 2 turnovers. One while the Steelers were at the goal line. And by Spoon's replacement in the lineup, Darion Kendrick as well. So a big improvement from week 1 for the Seahawks. My biggest takeaway is that we now know they are capable of playing the type of football that Mike McDonald spoke all offseason about wanting to play. All right, let's move on to our second topic. What have you been most surprised by from your team so far, good or bad? I feel like probably be more good, given that our division has been so dominant so far in the season. But Ryan Dyrud, LAFB Network, I'll go to you first. What surprised you the most about the Rams through 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think 2 things, Ethan. Maybe not extremely surprising, but the pass rush production so far from this team, just building on what they've already done. And I saw a stat just recently that players drafted since 2023, the Rams lead the NFL in sacks with 55. The next closest team is Tampa Bay at 27. So They lose Aaron Donald, and then they have just knocked it out of the park with their draft picks in terms of that defensive line. As I mentioned, Jared Verse, Byron Young, Kobe Turner, Braden Fisk. You kind of go down there, and those guys are just getting pressures and sacks at will almost. And one of the most, fearsome, foursome, if we're quoting an old Rams team back in the Los Angeles days, is kind of becoming that again. And then secondly, I don't know if it's super surprising, but I think how quickly Davante Adams has gotten involved in the offense. I mean, he got the lion's share of the targets against the Titans, really trying to get him involved, ended up with over 100 yards and his first touchdown as a Ram. So Matthew Stafford's a quarterback, at least since being in here, LA, is kind of keyed in on one receiver. We know the great Cooper Kupp years. We know how Puka Nacua ascended very quickly as a rookie. He's still one of the main dogs here, but Davante Adams has gotten very involved early, which is great to see. You want to be able to spread the ball around. So I think seeing the production and how quickly they've wanted to get him involved has been a little bit more surprising just on how quickly it's happened.
Rich, I'll go over to you next. What's been the most surprising thing about the Cardinals so far?
Well, first of all, I just want to talk about comments that Ryan made. To talk like, Bailey and the young kids. Did Ryan just low-key flex on how tough he is with the clavicle, the broken clavicle, and he came back so much quicker than they expect NFL players to come back? Yeah, I kind of caught that.
That's what I did, Richard.
You made up for it, Ryan. Yeah, you did, right? Maybe you're just special, right? Yeah, low key, right? I guess that's what Bailey and the cool kids say. But look, I like the fearsome foursome comment. That was great. We're going to throw out Eric Dickerson now, Jack Youngblood. That's good stuff. You know your stuff. I like that. Okay, back to the Cardinals now. Yeah, the surprise to me was the defensive backs, because that was one of the concerns I had, not because they didn't have talent there, just because they were so young. You had Will Johnson, the rookie out of Michigan, the second-round pick starting, Max Melton, and the other young guy, and then they have some injuries. Garrett Williams went down, Max Melton went down in the game. Denzel Burke, a fifth-round pick, got in the game. He played well, and but you got to remember, Monty Ossenfort, right, the GM of the Arizona Cardinals, has done a great job in drafting guys that come from winning programs, right? Denzel Burke comes in, you're like, well, this guy played, for Ohio State. Will Johnson, Michigan. These guys have been almost in semi-pro ball when you think about these programs and how good they've been over the years. So I've been impressed with the young guys not being overwhelmed, right, by the situation. But the one thing that kind of concerns me about the Cardinals is the running game. James Conner has not rushed for over 40 yards in a game so far this season. He had 39 in week 1, 34 last week. I know they're working in Trey Benson a little bit, but still, you need James Conner to get going. As a team, the Cardinals didn't have 100 yards rushing last week. So we all know, if you want to win the National Football League, you got to run the football.
Yeah, Richard, maybe you knew something in your fantasy drafts, drafting Christian McCaffrey and Kyron Williams over James Conner and Trey Benson. I don't know. Bailey, let's...
well, that's why we're a bit of a dynasty.
Yeah. Bailey, over to you now. What surprised you about the Niners so far?
Well, before that, I would have liked to see Richard's face when Christian McCaffrey was announced that he was going to be questionable with a calf injury going into week 1, because everybody who I knew who drafted Christian McCaffrey, when that happened, it was like PTSD set in and people were freaking out. But as far as what has surprised me about the Niners, it's not Christian McCaffrey. We knew who he was going to be. We know how this offense is designed around him, but the Niners have had so many injury problems for what seems like so long. I feel like a broken record. I don't know if we can chop up all the times I've said that. But it's been guys stepping up, and the Niners always say, across the NFL, they always say it's that next man up mentality. Well, the Niners, I feel like, have had to use that and put that into effect probably more times than most NFL teams have had to. So when George Kittle went down in week 1, he goes on to IR, so he is going to be out at least until week 5. The backup tight ends stepped up, and George Kittle is, I hesitate to say anybody's irreplaceable, but he's as close to irreplaceable as it gets when you talk about tight ends. And not just because of his production for this Niners team, but who he is and his personality. I mean, you see that if you watch a Niners game, you know who George Kittle is, you know how he acts, and how much his energy really feeds, how this team really feeds off of his energy. Luke Farrell and Jake Tonjes don't have those huge personalities that George Kittle has, but their ability to step in and fill the gap, the large gap that is left behind when George Kittle leaves for a number of weeks, has been very impressive to me. In week 1, Jake Tonjes somehow catching that game-winning touchdown. And then in week 2, the Niners fullback, Kyle Juszczyk, goes out with a concussion. We still don't know if he's going to be able to play in week 2. And they slide Tonjes into that fullback role. So you're talking about a couple of guys who are versatile beyond versatile, and they are just complete team guys willing to do whatever it takes and live that next man up mentality. So I think those two guys have really made a big impact. It's early, but they have made a big impact. And then the Niners' new kicker, I know it had been such a exhausting situation for Niners fans with Jake Moody. So I think that the new kicker, though, his first kick was a missed, I believe it was a point after attempt. I know people were freaking out when that happened, but he kind of got those nerves out of the way and made a couple field goals for this Niners team. So that was maybe not impressive. It's kicks that should be made, but I think a sigh of relief for Niners fans all across the Bay and across the country.
Yes, Bailey, thank you so much for bringing up that Jake Tonjes game winner. Catching the touchdown. I don't know if Seahawks fans would call it miraculous or not over week 1, but we'll let that go. Over here with the Seahawks, for me, it's Sam Darnold. I've been a lot more impressed by Sam than I was anticipating coming into the year. His
That's
numbers.
Fool's gold. Fool's gold, Ethan.
Yeah, his numbers in week 1 didn't really stand out at all, against the Niners. But having watched the game, I thought he did everything Clint Kubiak asked him to do. The play calling for me was just very conservative. In week 2, yes, Darnold threw the 2 interceptions. The first one, I thought it was a bad ball, underthrown looking for Cooper Kupp on a corner route. Jalen Ramsey in coverage. That one's on Sam. The second one, though, I'm going to give him a pass. 4th and 1, Kubiak calls a play action boot to the left. The Steelers weren't fooled at all. Darnold tries to make something happen. Ball gets tipped and he gets picked. You're not going to take a sack there on 4th down, so I'll give him a pass there. Other than that, just those 2 plays, I think he's been spectacular. Darnold's been incredibly accurate with the football. He's been getting the ball out of his hands on time. And he's shown an ability to escape pressure with his mobility at times. And that's what's been most surprising to me, most impressive. Most notably against the Steelers in the 4th quarter on a crucial 3rd and long. It led to a 19-yard gain to A.J. Barner and the Ken Walker eventual touchdown that put the game out of reach. I think Sam Darnold's play through 2 weeks has been very, very impressive. It's really impressed me. And I think it's only going to improve as the offense gets more game reps under its belt in a new scheme and Clint Kubiak gets more comfortable with his personnel. All right, let's go to the next topic. We're going to look ahead now to week 3. What do you make of your team's matchup, and will they cover the spread? We have a divisional matchup this week with the Niners hosting the Cardinals, so we have to start there. Bailey, I'll go to you first. How are you feeling, and do the Niners cover the 2.5 points that they are favored by?
Yeah, this one I think is going to be a defensive battle. Nick Bosa said that the Niners defense had a special meeting to talk about how to stop Kyler Murray. We know that Kyler Murray has given this Niners team so much difficulty. Last year, Nick Bosa called him like a squirrel, like he's just sort of everywhere all the time. And it's almost like a game of whack-a-mole, I feel like, when it comes to Kyler Murray versus the Niners defense. He just like pops up on another part of the field, and you're like, how did he get there? But that's Kyler Murray. That's my fantasy football quarterback. So we are 0-2, but that's okay. Not Kyler's fault. Do they cover the spread? I think they do. As I said, Mac Jones has been slinging it. He's a young quarterback. He's kind of got nothing to lose. We know Kyle Shanahan, the Niners head coach, knows how to put backup quarterbacks in a place to succeed. Ethan, you in Seattle, you just proved that in your last answer. Sam Darnold playing phenomenally in Seattle. So yeah, I think they cover the spread. I think it's going to be a heck of a defensive battle, but I think Mac Jones and Christian McCaffrey and Ricky Pearsall get this Niners offense going, and I think it's their home opener, their first game at Levi Stadium this season. So, yeah, I think they got nothing to lose. It's week 3, and I think they cover the spread, and I think that both defenses show up big, and I think they'll play well against Kyler Murray.
Wow, I find that very interesting. So, Bailey, you've got Kyler Murray on your fantasy team. Richard, you have McCaffrey on your fantasy team. Richard, I'll go. I mean, is this where the Cardinals' undefeated run ends, Richard? And is McCaffrey in your starting fantasy lineup this week?
Oh, it's McCaffrey all the way. I did notice that when she mentioned Kyler Murray. I'm like, oh, wow, that's interesting that we have the opposing team's star player on our fantasy rosters. But the other thing that stood out to me was the joke that Bailey said earlier in the show, where she said Mac Jones was a baller. I wrote it in my diary. I'm going to laugh about it later tonight. That is a funny joke. But then you, Ethan, come back with an even better joke. I don't know which joke, Ryan, maybe you can help me out here. Which joke is funnier, that Mac Jones is a baller, or that Sam Darnold's been spectacular? I'm like, what is going on? I'm like,
better than Geno, right? Better than Geno.
I'd rather have Geno Smith over both of those quarterbacks. It's funny because the Garoppolo's a better quarterback than both of those guys, and so is Jacoby Brissett. So that really made me chuckle. I wish you guys could have seen me off camera. I was drinking my water, and I'm like, what did he just say? That's spectacular. That you guys are cracking me up today. Whenever I'm at a bar and I see somebody having a good time, I want what she's having. I want what you guys are having. That's what I want to try. That was spectacular comments. I'll tell you that. But yes, if Mac Jones was a baller,
we're drinking
he would still
the
be
Kyle
in New England.
Shanahan
He wouldn't be the backup
quarterback Kool-Aid.
Kyle Shanahan's a baller. Robert Sala's a baller. That's for sure. The defense is good. But yes, I think the Cardinals are going to cover the spread. They're going to go to San Francisco. They're going to beat the 49ers in their own house. All the fans are going to be disappointed with the home opener, just like they were last year when the Cardinals went to San Francisco and beat them. And the way they beat them was by running the football. And Kyler Murray had a big run, took it in for he broke. He saw himself on the Jumbotron. He already had his finger up. 45. So that would be good for you, Bailey, for your fantasy team. Not good for the Chimichangas, because last year, Kyler Murray had over 80 yards rushing. So did James Conner as a team, over 160 yards rushing. So the Cardinals have to get that ground game, as I mentioned earlier, going, and then get to Mac Jones. Make sure he's not the baller, because, you can look like a baller against the Saints, but the Cardinals defense is much better than they were last year, and they've been getting after the opposing team's quarterbacks, and they're going to do that again this Sunday. They cover the spread, they win, and they remain undefeated.
Wow.
But Christian McCaffrey has a good game.
There we go.
Of course. Yeah, that's going to be a fun one this weekend. Everybody here on this show is going to be tuning into that one. I will go next with my Seahawks, who are led by the spectacular Sam Darnold. I'm standing by it, and they're going against a team that your Cardinals and Niners just played. The Seahawks are heavy home favorites against the New Orleans Saints, 7.5-point favorites, who come in 0-2 with losses to Arizona and San Francisco. A lot of people have been really quick to write this one off as an easy win, but I think it's going to be a much closer game, I hate to say it, than people think. The Saints played Arizona and San Francisco, both tough, losing both games by a combined 12 points. They've got Carl Granderson, who's tied for the league lead in sacks with 3.5, and we know what Cam Gordon is capable of on that defensive line. Plus, Spencer Rattler, he's looked a lot better than expected to start the year at quarterback. He was better against the Niners defense than Sam Darnold and the Hawks were on the stat sheet. This is absolutely a game the Hawks should win. I just don't think it's going to be borderline 2 possessions like Vegas is suggesting right now. It's really hard to forget about the Seahawks loss to the Giants early last season. This game sort of gives me that kind of vibe, sort of shades of that game. So I think the Seahawks get it done, but I think it's by a field goal against a really scrappy Saints team. Bailey, sort of, you mentioned it's going to be a defensive battle. I think it's going to be similar in this Saints-Seahawks game at Lumen Field. Ryan, let's go over to you. Good matchup for the neutrals. The Rams taking on the reigning Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. Philly favored by 3.5 at home for this one. How are you feeling about the matchup, and can the Rams pull off the upset?
Yeah,
Run
two
the football,
real quick
Rams.
things,
Run
Ethan.
the football.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to need to. But I'm going to make you a shirt. Stop the Sammy slander, because I'm with you. Sammy D's looking good so far this year.
Thank you.
And Richard, if you liked the Fearsome Foursome, you were absent the day I did a 5-minute monologue on Dieter Brock, the old rookie from the Canadian Football League who led the Rams to the 1985 NFC Championship game. So how's that for some historical context? But in terms of this week,
your street cred's going way up in my book. I'm telling you right now, man.
There we go. I had to earn it somehow. No, it's going to be a great matchup. Obviously, the Rams played the Eagles twice last year, losing both of them, the last coming in the NFC divisional round. And they specifically went out in free agency and signed Poona Ford away from the Los Angeles Chargers to help clog up that middle and slow down Saquon Barkley. So that was like the main reason they brought him, obviously to stop the run against other teams, but they were really keying in on Saquon Barkley, knowing that's the team they're going to have to get through to get to the Super Bowl, they believe, this year. So Poona Ford's been great for this team so far. They feel like he can help with that. They went out also and got Nate Landman, who was last week's NFC Defensive Player of the Week, or Week 1, I should say, and has performed really well for this team so far and helping in that run defense. So that's going to be the big matchup there, is how this run defense can go up against Saquon Barkley. On offense, like you alluded to, Richard, got to see this Rams team commit to running the football and doing it successfully. Unfortunately for you, Richard, I think we're going to see a little bit more Blake Corum a little bit more every week, as he does bring that explosiveness that Kyren Williams just doesn't quite have. But hopefully they'll keep Kyren Williams in that goal line packages that Blake Corum vultured last week away from him. So we should see more of that. And the last thing I'll say, and this is the national storyline every week, is how this tush-push is going to look. Are the Eagles going to be able to continue lining up off sides over the ball, or are the refs actually going to make them line up correctly how the rules have been written for 75-plus years? The play itself, I have no problem with, but letting guys line up off sides, that's a different story. And how the Rams will stop it. I believe the Eagles ran it 7 times last week against the Kansas City Chiefs, so the Rams will be tasked with hopefully stopping that. And the final thing I'll say in that, I said this on my show this week, I'm going to say it here because it's the thing that drives me crazy. I have no problem with the play, but when you're on defense and you see 3 or 4 bodies jumping over the pile, it's useless. You lose all your leverage, you lose all your push. They're going to convert every time. So if the Rams can stay disciplined and actually utilize that strength that they use going against the sleds in practice, maybe they can get a stop or two. So, but should be a great game. I do think the Rams cover. If they lose, I think it's just by a field goal, so they'll cover barely. I think they could pull off the upset, though, and go 1 for 2 over the past 3 matchups in Philly.
Yeah, that tush push. Yeah, a lot of discussion around that through the first 2 weeks of the season. And hey, you know what? We've been talking about fantasy all show long, so why don't we end it with our 4th topic? For you guys, which player from your team is set for a standout fantasy performance in Week 3? Richard, I feel like it's only right we go to you first. Does Kyler Murray get Bailey her first win of the season? What say you?
Yes, I think he does. And you set it up for me. You teed it up. Yeah, I think he's due for a big game. We got a glimpse of it last week against Carolina when he was dead to rights, right? They had him. You're thinking, if you're the Panthers defense, this is an easy sack. He squirms out of there like the little squirrel that he is, Bailey, and he ends up with a 30-yard gain. And you're like, that's the Kyler Murray that Cardinal fans know and love. But then, a couple minutes later, on that same possession, he could just throw the ball away. They're already in field goal range, and it's 3rd down. He ends up trying to scramble around, make something happen, like he's at the University of Oklahoma, and throws an ill-advised pass that gets intercepted, and you're like, oh, what are you thinking? And that changed the whole tone of the game. But I think he'll be more disciplined. He'll be looking to run more, and I think he's going to have one of his best games of the year, if not the best game of the year so far. I know we're only 3 weeks in, but I think, Bailey, your fantasy team is going to be unlike the Valkyries and get into the win column. Like Mercury, they're still in it in the WNBA playoffs. But yeah, before I let you guys go, even if you guys lose to the Saints, this is what you're going to be saying next week. You're going to say, come back, Geno. I never thought I would say that. But when you see Sam Darnold, I think I'd rather have Geno Smith.
Come on. Wow. All right. Well, luckily that's not going to happen, so we're not going to be saying that at all. I'm just going to move on. Bailey, what about you fantasy-wise with the Niners? And what about Richard Saenz' favorite player in the NFL, Christian McCaffrey?
The CNC Music Factory. Give it to McCaffrey.
Like Patrick Mahomes, he's like Patrick Mahomes. I will never bet against Patrick Mahomes because he does things that you're like, how the heck did he do that? Christian McCaffrey is you got to apply the same logic to him. How the heck does he do those things? So, yeah, he's never, unless it's last season when he's hurt basically the whole year, it's never a bad idea. It's never a bad thing to have Christian McCaffrey on your fantasy football team. Am I a little jealous? I wish I had Christian McCaffrey on my fantasy football team. Absolutely. I give credit where it's due. But that's not how the fantasy football draft order gods, helped me out this year or didn't help me out, punished me this year for winning it all last year. But that's okay. We won't talk about that. Yeah, I think Christian is going to go off this week. He he's due for a game where he goes off, and I think this could be it. Now, I am worried for my own fantasy football sake with Kyler Murray. I know the Niners have focused so heavily on stopping the run. Their run defense has been amazing already. Again, it's very early. We're just entering week 3. I think they're going to give Kyler Murray a heck of a time. I mean, if you're having a meeting about just how, I mean, they have tons of meetings, but about just how we can stop one guy, this quarterback who's been giving us problems for years. And at this point, like, I don't know if it's personal, but it almost feels a little personal. Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, they want to stop Kyler Murray. So I'm a little nervous for my fantasy team when it comes to that. But I think regardless, some of my other guys are going to come up big this year, or this week. So I think the Niners get the win. I think my fantasy football team gets their first win. The Niners get their first win at home. Bailey's fantasy team gets their first win of the year. We'll have to celebrate come Sunday night, Monday morning. Well, I guess Monday night.
Bailey,
Check back in next week.
Bailey, I feel so much less sorry for you. I forgot that you'd won it all last year. I missed the playoffs last year. I'm still sending it over too. So whatever. We are not the same, I don't think. Ryan, you're next. Who from the Rams are you picking to have a big fantasy day?
Yeah, I'll give you one standout, Ethan, and one sleeper as well. So I talked just earlier about Davante Adams and how they were really force-feeding him the ball last week, got in the end zone. But I think this is Puka Nakua's week against the Eagles. I do believe that Cooper DeJean will be primarily covering Davante Adams just because Puka lines up more in the slot and they move him around a little bit more. So I think that'll allow him, to find open space and Matthew Stafford to key in on him. And, still had an 80-plus yard game last week, just didn't get in the end zone. So still obviously one of his favorite targets, and I think he'll get a little bit more love this week just because of the matchup is a little better. And I mean, the Eagles have a fantastic secondary across the board, but I think Cooper DeJean on Davante will let Puka eat a little bit more. And then I alluded to it last segment, and Richard's not going to like it, but as a sleeper, I think Blake Corum is someone to look for as maybe vulturing some from Kyren Williams. So after last week's game, Kyren Williams had 17 carries, Blake Corum had 5. Sean McVay said that's a little closer to the split he wants to see between the two, kind of a 60-40. We'll see if that ramps up a little closer to 65-35 and gives Blake Corum maybe a little more love, because that explosiveness is telling and is very different than what Kyren Williams brings to that backfield. So maybe a Blake Corum sleeper, but I think Puka Nacua will be the one to eat on Sunday.
Yeah, for me with the Seahawks, it's sort of tough because I'm not really predicting the offense to have the strongest day against a pretty good Saints defense. If I had to pick one, maybe Zach Charbonnet. The running backs have sort of flip-flopped who's getting the better blocking each week. Zach Charbonnet had a better week 1. Ken Walker a better week 2. I like Charbonnet to get it going in week 3. But really, my pick, I feel really good about starting the Hawks defense this week. Is that a cop-out? Maybe. But the Hawks, they're leading the league in pressure rate, but also blitz the second least in the entire league. So combine that with the Saints having some real question marks at tackle, and I love the Seahawks defense to be able to get to Spencer Rattler multiple times in this game. It was the interior of the defensive line that stood out against the Steelers. Leonard Williams, Jaron Reed, Byron Murphy. I like edge rushers Derek Hall and Boye Mafe to have big games in week 3, contributing to what should be a big fantasy day for the Hawks defense. All right. That's going to do it for this fantasy football edition, I guess, of the NFC West Huddle. Thank you to our incredible panel. Richard, get that stuff out of here. Be sure to check out everyone's content on our respective Fox websites and head over to lafbnetwork.com for Ryan's awesome continuous coverage of the Rams. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.